When you see a class of mulattoes beginning to rise, you are now looking at open warfare. You are about to face assault. I'm telling you now, the mulattoes are here, and they're dangerous.
Need to do is get back to reading credits. Read the medics alphabetically, stuck on that English shit. Now, quick now, before we pour that short shot, pure rock, okay, roll.
From the top of the key for 3 villain. Been on in the game as long as he can really swing. Turn the corner spinning, bust that ass and get up. Dust off the mask, whoever laugh, give him a head up. He got jumped, it pumped his adrenaline. He said it made him tougher than a bump of raw medicine. To write all night long, the hourglass is still slow. Flow from hellborn to free power like Lil Cole. And still owe bills, pay dues forever. Slave use when it comes to who's more cleverer. Used to wear leather goose fee with the fur collar. And charge the fee for loose leaf, words per dollar, you heard holler. Broad or dude, we need food. Eat your teams for sure, the streets sure seem rude. For fam like the Partridges, pardon him for the mix-up. Battle for your Atari cartridges or put your kicks up, it's a stick up.
Put your blicks up. These Riddick bowl cuts is swole like penile flicks. Give him 20. The danger in his eyes will let you know he's a brawler. Bring your tallest champs like that much taller. 10 pounds heavier, one step ahead of it. Vocab, stamina, styles, all irrelevant. Camps and cliques, units, squad crews and clans. Even your tongues will fuck around and lose your ball.
Boom, brung that bong. There goes that news van again. Act like you're new like toucan salmon them. He eat rappers like part of a complete breakfast. Their rhymes ain't worth the weight of their cheap necklace. String them up, bring them up under whack jump snack. And get that out your hand, punk. Jump and get your dunk smacked. Foul, we all know the rules, bro. You slow, you blow the super, you fools. His own boss like you
go. Lights, camera, action with no makeup. We nail out to the death, or at least until we break up. Here's a couple of nice guys who finish first. So nice try, but the prize is ours dispersed. They say the good die young, so I added some badass to my flavor to prolong my life over the drum. Everyone cools off from being hot. It's about if you can handle being cold or not. And we was told to hop on no one's dick by Prince Paul. We stayed original ever since, y'all. First to do a lot of things in the game, but the last to say it. No need to place it on a scale to weigh it. And don't do it for the praise or to raise the bar. Yeah, this raised anyways, so amazing are the 3 L.I. brothers from the other way of thinking. Hey, you ladies thinking I think you need to control that, or I have to hold
the elements are airborne, I smell the success. Yo, let's cookie cut this shit and get the gingerbread, man. Sacrifice mics and push drugs to these rappers. Puff ponies till I turn blue in the lips. Sipping broads like 7-Up. So refreshing. I finger pop these verses like first dates. The birth date September 21, 19, 68. Too old to rhyme, too bad.
What's up, people? Mic check. Mic check, Pixie, you know. Special show for y'all this week. Exclusive show. The title, of course, is reviewing the agenda to have us serve under blackness. This is something I explained very articulately a long time ago, and so far different people have taken it, but kind of botch a little bit here and there. Message comes out not so clear, and it's important because the difference between being right and wrong, or being justified or not justified. Now, let's talk about the mulatto elite. Who is the mulatto elite? We're doing a lot of research for that, and we know there was a mulatto elite and might still exist in Haiti. Very small, upper, very educated, rich class of mulatto people, and I mean, it's kind of mythology, kind of not. Like, it's kind of like the Blue Vein Society. Like, I was looking at research for the Blue Vein Society, and a lot of the references come from fiction books, right? It comes from this kind of fiction, so it's really hard to get the reality of it. And the mulatto elite is, I hear people talk about that in the U.S. too, and it does exist, but now they'll consider upper class African Americans, but it's still mostly mulattoes, but they don't call it, like, it depends who's talking about it. If they're talking to black people, they'll call it the mulatto elite. If you're talking to other people, they'll call it the black African American elite, the black elite. But that's to give it, I feel they're using us to kind of make themselves look better. Like, they're not like accounting for the numbers. Just like they go to university, if you look at the disproportionately of the high performing black students that are called black, they're actually mulatto people, right? I've heard Tariq Nasheed talk about the mulatto elite here. I've heard that guy's name. It's like a Manosphere guy. Yells all the time. He always has the reverb. Kind of short. He's the loudest big mouth there. Talks to Jessica X. I've heard him talk about, if I remember his name, I should know it because I've known him the longest in all these places actually. But I can't think of it right now. You know, he's always talking about the non-select men. Damn, what's his name? Yeah, he always brings up the mulatto elite. So it's, again, it's kind of shrouded in mystery, kind of not like there is a group. And other than that, it mostly gets referenced from like other things that I'm reading. Like throughout a lot of this is all based on the history of black and mulatto people throughout the entire history. I'm talking about the whole destruction of black civilization narrative and everything, right? And it comes from that fear that, well, they're going to outperform, right? They're out, and it's always that we got to make it be about whiteness. It can never be that, you know, it's just their own group. It's about this whiteness thing. Even a lot of the stories concerning the Blue Vein Society back then, it seemed like it was shaming mulattoes for like trying to be white when they weren't, right? Put some related pictures on my my community tab regarding mulatto elite. These are supposed to be mulatto elite, so these are, I guess, high ups. Supposed to be like the top of the military. I see people posting comments here and there, like about them kind of talking bad about us, but you have no idea how much of the content, how much comments I have, like really bad ones too, from over time. So I like to use the term just to kind of like, because it creates a bit of fear, like it makes black people go, ooh, what's going on? It's the mulatto elite. It's just pretty much the upper class, so like the most educated, the more upper rich, kind of like top 10%, right? Actually, they used to call us the top 10% historically. Different names, but same shit. And they believe that they're being secretly kept out, and there's like a conspiracy, and that always happens with these conspiracy theories when you think the other group is smarter than you. I mean, what I got with notes here. Oh, when we talk about history too, when we talk about history concerning this, we got to be. It's not just a matter of uncovering our history. It's a matter of being able to disconnect it from the black voice that is telling us our history, right? You have to really be careful. Sometimes you can tell in the exaggerated ways in which they talk, like the way they talk about the mulatto elite. Oh, they just wanted to be white, and it was who was closest to whiteness, or who was so that you can see their veins that they could say. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that. I heard a woman the other day talk about the word mulatto, right? That one of the women that were gaslighting that biracial woman, she said that the word mulatto meant between black and white, like meaning like in class. Like she told her it was just a matter of reference of class. But what's important about that is to see how inconsistent in the different stories that black people create around the word and why you shouldn't use it. And it's not even always because of what they consider like the fact that it means mule. I did so much research on that, tried to find who considers it offensive. There's no who. It just says at a certain time but there's no reference to the people who consider it even offensive. It even says a lot of mulatto people don't consider it offensive. So you have to be careful. Don't just assume that. Okay, but that's concerning the term. That's not the main issue here today as well. Oh yeah, about the agenda. So there's quite a few different agendas to bring us under blackness. I would say more violent, straightforward ones. We're going to look at those ones today just for fun. I mean, when it comes to pro-blackness, okay, listen. When it comes to, let's say, there are the types that want us, but are becoming a part of them inherently makes us like subservient, based on the fact that we're perceived to have privilege. We have to use our privilege, therefore our actions should be for the benefit of black people and not for ourselves. We're supposed to be, I guess, bringing ourselves down. The presumption is, of course, well, if we're half white, we must be in a class in between, when the truth is, because we're outnumbered and we're actually a minority, we're outnumbered by black people and they have more power than us. So that whole intersectional shit comes crashing down. Okay? Now, somebody who's the Prince of Pan-Africanism, which is unique, and it's heteronormative. Let's look at the difference too. The heteronormative ones are usually harsher. So like the serious, race nationalists that see us more like a bug or an insect. Those are usually the harshest, but those are also, they tend to be heteronormative. Prince of Pan-Africanism is a heteronormative movement, right? It's not pro-gay. It's not pro-gays. And yeah. Where we can't just be black, and so in other words, in that movement, we have to talk down to our parents, we have to basically talk shit about them, and we have to use whatever to so we end up serving by virtue of our assumed privilege, and that's how, it's not said. So even if you wanted to be a subgroup or subset, you can clearly hear when you use the word subset, it really takes away the negative connotation. You can see doesn't mean under, it just means like a subset of something, a subgroup or something, right? Even that, because we cannot fully perform in blackness, which is like one of probably my most popular video, is that we still can't be, unless we can be fully black and we don't have to do these extra privileges. We have to be more Malcolm X than everybody else, and just kind of always to prove that we're not white. We inevitably end up serving blackness. Okay, and of course now in the intersectional way, we're going to go after the mixed and queer. The whole mixed and queer thing. We did a great live on it. I think it was me, Vanguard, and Briella a long time ago, and I might redo that one soon, just to show you how they're trying to get us to serve under blackness and erase our identity when it comes to the whole intersectional hierarchy, right? The whole intersectional oppression hierarchy was created by black lesbians. Therefore, the black lesbians are at the top, right? Everybody else, and the only way you can beat them is you have to be disabled. Black, lesbian, and disabled. Then you get to speak the most. You get to the top. Everybody else has to listen to you all the way down. Oh, okay, so even within the staunch racial nationalism, there's the ones that accept light-skinned blacks, and there's the ones that don't even accept them. Right? They'll consider any kind of. Okay. As a special, today I want to focus on probably one of the most infamous kind of anti-mulatto popular people, just because I have the footage and you can't get anywhere else. The Irritated Genie. Have you guys heard about the Irritated Genie? You've heard many clips. People have different clips and stuff over from the internet, but nobody has the whole video, the full video like I have. The one where he really goes at us, and that's what we're going to kind of look at today. Sound like fun? Hey, Northern Lights, nice to see you. You come co-host a news broadcast sometime. So yeah, so the purpose of this was just to kind of talk about the mulatto league. What is it, right? I talked about it a little bit already, and it's it's part mythology, it's partly true, and I'm going to do a little more research on it. I think there are some stuff going into the American, there is some stuff out there about the American one, but just basically that there's this elite class, and they kind of working with whiteness to keep black people down, and they create the buffer class and all that shit. But I like to use the name just to keep them on their toes, make them makes them scared. They're afraid of the mulatto elite. I started making some art that looks mulatto elite-ish. a lot, man. I've done a lot. I've come a long way too with these. We're at the beginning, from the beginning. These guys considered part of the mulatto elite, rich upper class, right? The purpose of this, purpose of all these images, like art is a very strong form of influence, believe it or not. Right, it's a very strong influence. Even you might not notice, but when you look around, you notice the pictures are getting more like LGBT. Like the faces are always getting more and more, like they just look more queer, and it's more over time. They kind of do it slowly, and they're starting to put more mixed faces, more of us in pictures, weirdly and almost excessively, especially the women. When I was looking at the different like you know, you get sets of pictures for different video editors. So many of them are mixed people, okay, and they're not real. They're actually using artificially generated mixed people. That's how I got the idea for this, right? I was studying all the different, you know, the different commercials, and I started to notice images that were the same, or like they put the same, it's the same image as that same biracial one, but in something else. And I started to notice that a lot of them weren't real, right? I started to notice that they were, they're being made to give it a sense of diversity, but they're not real. That's what I mean. And then we'll get into, actually I might not even gonna get into it. Okay, so one of the biggest, most obvious, it's kind of like the most obvious threats is the irritated genie, and he had this famous live stream on YouTube. It didn't get like flagged or anything. It was up there for the longest time, about the rise of the mulattoes, right? And this is all based off the Fall of Black Civilization, which is a book which tries to make us the primary number one problem for black people throughout history, and the reason for why they are having problems now. Of course, it presumes that white people want to mix, that they deliberately mix to infiltrate, which is not true. And this, you can't get this anywhere else. This is inclusive as hell. I mean, this is exclusive as hell, but they might be able to copy this, like when I play it, but that's about it. Because all this stuff is banned from the internet. Are you there, Pixie, or is that Mulatto? Ready? Okay. We're just gonna take a little. We're just gonna listen to a bit of this, just to kind of see the hostility that. Get a sense of the hostility that's out there. It's a longie. We're not going to finish it. Probably going to go about an hour. Let's go about an hour. I'm going to play it a bit. I'm going to get some water. Okay. It's straight black pride. Important. That means it's heteronormative. But heteronormative racism is like the white nationalism, where they don't. What's important here, I want you to listen to the lyrics of the song they're playing. It sounds like a happy, everyday song, but if you listen very carefully, you can see it's talking about us. It's talking about race mixing. It's talking about how we're the devil. Listen carefully.
Culture bandits. Multicultural
right? Shades of gray, like to race mix. You must be out your goddamn mind. You must be out your mind. Oh, and the mulatto problem. You can just search mulatto problem. You'll see a lot of things come up. That like how were the problems? Saying multicultural, colorblind, shades of gray, intertwine, meaning race mix with white people like a mix. You must be out your rabbit ass mind. You must be out your mind. And it's still and rob you of invention, just the same way that they came in. Stole us from our land and put us on plantation. Now Master has given us a good job. We're profit 'cause we forgot where we came from, assisting them just like the sorry Sambo. When the slaves would run away, they would capture. We call them the Popo today. Feeling good, feeling fine. Multicultural, colorblind, shades of gray, intertwined. You must be out your rabbit ass mind.
35 Culture Bandits.
This is something I did cover on my other channel. I've already covered this once, but it's all lost, so figured might as well show the original, right? You'll see different clips of this, but you won't see this whole thing.
My ancestors woke me up this morning. They say, son, you do know what time it is, don't you? I said, what time is that? They said it's wartime. So welcome to the war front, brothers and sisters. That was Sister Fuchsia with her song Culture Bandit.
Now, this guy has been considered a he is registered in the SPLC hate on a hate list. Not that it really says much there, but he is like registered probably because of this, because he's very straightforward with his anti-mulatto agenda.
I say you must be out your African mind, we'll say. Glad to have you with us this Monday, June 27th, 2000.
And this had a lot of views. This was like had a whole bunch of views under it.
2016. Whoa, we got a program for you to.
You see how it's 2016? Yeah, that's important. When I talked about when it ruse, like when that it didn't, like I didn't notice it before. When the racial tensions increased because it's 2016, and then we really started to see this hostility. We started to get all these videos talking about. Right, biracials are not black, blah, 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 all that came out. And this right after that. This was like a backlash. As soon as whenever there's racial tension between white and black people, we become distrusted, right? We become used as pawns, right? If you think of it, it's not just black people that want us to serve under blackness, but white people that serve under whiteness as well. When you look at all like the kind of like I hate to say it, but the token, we've got a lot of token biracials and mulattoes, on the right wing pundits, just kind of doing their talking points, whatever it is. Like again, they're not really thinking. Again, when they're doing that, they're not really thinking of themselves as a group either, right? But they are technically serving them. They're basically used to throw at other black people. You know what I'm saying? They're used as weapons to say, "Oh, well, you're black, so you can say that."
Right, brothers and sisters, we have a program for you tonight. So without any further ado, I want to just say a few announcements. I showed them as we were starting, so I don't have to go through too many of them, but do want to let everybody know some of the major events we have coming up. This Friday, we're going to be in Pasadena, California. You do not want to miss it. They say I'm going to be on West Side, so now that they say I'm riding this weekend, so we're going to be doing the feminization of the black male.
He does seem to, he does have he strikes me as somebody who does care about his people. He does have a sincere in-group.
Not too much. Then we're gonna make it a whole weekend.
But-
so don't worry, we make it a whole weekend.
It's a very complicated subject because it's almost like the more in group you are, it kind of correlates with racism, right? Right? The more you are pro in, it's almost like you are less out, and therefore that's how you get this, right? That's how you get this overall. Because what's racism really? I don't believe that the racism is this construct that's made. And like if you take a white child and put it with and it comes out a white womb and you give that to a black person, that child's going to cry a lot more. We've already tested that. The children themselves already have a precondition of at least in group, out group, what's more related to me and what's not. Right, and it's more that if you don't check that, you'll get racism. But if you just let it grow normal, I think that it automatically creates an in group out. I don't believe like it has to be this thing created by white people or something. And
that's going to be the feminization of the black male. But check it out. You have opportunity to talk.
That's happening, the feminization of black men, but they can't figure it out because they don't know where it's coming from. It comes from feminism. Comes from a lot of their own black.
All these other brothers and sisters who will be there for the entire day, and then on Monday. We don't have the exact location yet. We do, but I don't know for you've never traveled to Africa. They bring Africa right here to you. We have the brother and sister who put it together. The Dickersons put it together so beautiful out of Camden, New Jersey. You've never seen anything like this, so you don't want to miss this. But we're going to here it is. It says right here, the definition of mulatto. We just put it right in here in Google. A person of mixed white and black ancestry, especially a person with one white and one black parent. So when you hear us here at One Horizon say the word mulatto, we are not talking about a light-skinned person. Let me be very clear. My entire family is light. In fact, I'm one of the darkest people.
You know, it's hilarious. I think he eventually got in trouble or was considered like a spy because of his light skin, so he ended up getting like so even he, despite being light and mostly black, they turned on him because of getting suspicious of his lightness. So I mean, you can go in there as a light skin if you're like bright, if you want to tread lightly, but you're always going to be treading on like, you know, broken glass. You're just going to be walking on broken glass, and they're going to accuse you as working for that happens in all these kind of racial nationalist groups, by the way, where they start accusing each other as being like in the white nationalism. It's always accusing each other of Jews. Like everybody's a Jew. Everybody has a distant, somehow connected. It's hilarious. All the leaders get accused of that because they get paranoid.
People in my family, not the darkest, but one of them. But we're all black, and you know, I had to say, you know, I'm happy to be in the family that I'm in. Got really good brothers and sisters. They may not be conscious, and you might even say they're Negroes, but they some good Negroes. You know, they straight, they black, and they proud. You know, for the most part.
That's the criteria. I like that he said consciousness. I think that's important because one of our biggest faults is not having a consciousness. What I mean by that is a collective mulatto consciousness because of our fragmentation, because we're fragmented throughout, and we're always confronted with the white people are not going to like you, so you're kind of stuck with us, and all these other pressures, right? And this includes political pressures. Even our schools are kind of pushing that idea that you should be helping the black people. That we don't have our own consciousness. We don't have this sense of we're here, we are our people, we have an opportunity to have our own interests in our own group, and that's ripped away from us. You've seen this in the video where I was helping that biracial woman, where even like they were talking about making safe spaces for biracials, but it wasn't for biracials. It was to kind of teach them the propaganda to serve under blackness, safe space. So in other words, to cut them off from other biracials who would kind of get them out of that, right? And what they're doing is they're taking away our consciousness. They're trying to get rid of, you don't have one. They're saying a two race. You can't be two races, right? You can't be two races. You can't, right? Or we're half and half, which make it right. That's taking away our consciousness. Okay, and this is not a new thing. I got evidence of this going back pretty far in the black community.
Well, all I know, every one of them is straight, every one of them black, every one of them proud that I can think of. I think I got one cousin that married a devil. I don't talk to her no more, so you know, I don't know how much that one counts, but
so yeah, I guess you had a cousin that married a white man or something. She doesn't count. She's out of the family.
She happens to be one of the darkest people in the family, but you know, you can't win all of them. We all fall short of the glory of Amen, even my family. So, suffice it to say, we are not talking about complexion, and that's very important. Even though once we start having this discussion today, I realized the necessity is here. We are actually going to have a dialogue about, and I think we're not going to do it next week because that's 4th of July and I'm going to be in California. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a lecture that day, so I won't be able to do it. But the Monday after that, we got to do a discussion on colorism, light and dark in the Black community, because I see it's a very, very, very touchy subject, but I don't want to even begin to get into that now. I want to really deal with the mulatto thing. So,
which would put him again under a bit, puts even light-skinned people, all light-skinned people kind of go under the assumption that you just have it better because, you know.
Again,
I would say that, I mean, there's yes and no. I mean, yeah, there's yes and no. There's never a place
when we're talking about mulattoes, we're talking about somebody that has a white parent. That's very important because our people are getting the wrong context of what we're talking about and not really understanding what's going on. And I understand that because a lot of our people, and let me just make this one last point, then I'm gonna start getting into the knowledge of it. Then we're gonna go to our phone lines, probably about an hour, because I'm gonna spend some time really teaching tonight so people can understand why this is an important issue. When you have not read and studied African history and the war for African survival against Europeans and Arabs and others.
When he's talking here, he's most of his references are coming from that book, the Destruction of Black Civilization, which I was reading when Vanguard got here. Right, got through most of that.
Asiatics, which include Europeans, Arabs, Indians, all of them.
Sometimes called the Black Bible behind the scenes.
When you haven't studied it and don't understand it, you come out of your lack of consciousness. You may be unconscious. You become conscious, meaning you realize that these white folk trying to kill us and other groups trying to destroy us, and we're in a war for our racial survival, and that Black people under siege, under attack. That's what
all that, yeah. Also, all that you have to believe in all that in conscious.
Consciousness means in 2016. And when you get that information, now you just want it to be black against white, and that's it. You don't want no more discussion about nothing else. What happens is it's like a 5-year-old coming into a dance circle with people who've been dancing for years and decades. And they learn one dance and they do it really good. And they think they can come into the dance circle. And now, no, let's just go. Let's go right out there right now and do it. And it's like, yeah, they can dance and they can dance when they got the fire and drive. But these people have been dancing for 20 years. So there's more to dancing than just going up there and knowing how to move. You got to know what dance to do for what people, what dance to change for the environment, what to do if you have young people. And there's all these different things that go with, when you're drumming, what type of moves you do.
There's so many fantastic quotes in this. Like, that's obviously where I get the quote for my intro. In this,
who you allow to go first is the elders, and all kinds of stuff that you just don't know because you're so young and you in it. It's the same way when people come into their consciousness. They come into their consciousness and they come with whatever personality they had before they come into some consciousness, they carry that. So if they're a real aggressive person, then they're aggressive. And with little or no research or understanding of topics, sometimes.
But you see even how they have here, this kind of propaganda where you see them in groups. You see all the Black people together. You see them fighting. We don't have that, right? I've started to make some of that, like that kind of art, which gives us a sense of identity. But it's art is the most. You have no idea how much political art there is out there that just looks like innocent, but it's not. It's made to send a certain message, to make you think a certain way, or to get you to think of certain things.
I did it, so I'm on one of the main carpets I know. We can be so driven with our own idea of how it's supposed to work, we can miss a lot of things. And we can quite frankly be a lot of very disrespectful to people who have a little bit more understanding. I'm a little bit more lenient to that because I was such a jerk about doing it in the past. And so many people gave me passes on it that I do have some room. I don't get too much room because I'm still a jerk a little bit, I don't like people coming in that don't know what the heck they're talking about and just running off at the mouth and not understanding how wrong they are, how dangerous what they're saying are. But at the same time, I did it too. We all tend to do it because until you know, you don't know. So I'm saying that to say, brothers and sisters, let's learn something. This is a message to everybody that's listening. When we're on Facebook and we're talking about things, like we put out the thing about the mulattoes today, we put out Jesse Williams' speech that he did. And, we didn't even put that out. We just put out the advertisement and said, we're going to talk about the rise of the mulattoes because I've seen it for a couple of years now, even did a lecture talking about it and told people back in 2008 that it was coming and it was going to be a major problem. And it's beginning to become that major problem. You've seen Barack Obama.
the idea that we're getting bigger, right? The idea that we're getting bigger, and they're getting, the more bigger we get, the more intimidated they get, because they're, based on their understanding of history, they tend to end up on the bottom, basically, right? They tend to often, I mean, if you want to believe what they're saying, when I'm saying their history, I'm saying their believed history, or how it's believed according to them. There are other sources which justify that. Those are white sources which say the same thing, that the mixed races tend to end up dominating over the black ones. But that's in the book The Superiority of the Mulatto. But yeah, they have that same.
The magic mulatto and the damage that he's caused to the African world. But now we need to have a more sophisticated understanding.
The magic. They hate Obama, big time. Especially because he pushed the LGBT stuff, like he really was.
Coming into a dance circle with people who've been dancing for years, and you want to start chiming in on the mulatto issue, I suggest that you go.
You see on the video I posted on my other channel, it was that book, right? That was the book I was teaching.
The magic mulatto and the damage that he's caused to the African world. But now we need to have a more sophisticated understanding.
Yeah,
I did it, so I'm on one of the main carpets. I know.
He was predicting this.
We can be so driven with our own idea of how it's supposed to work, we can miss a lot of things. And we can quite frankly be a lot of very disrespectful to people who have a little bit more understanding. I'm a little bit more lenient to that because I was such a jerk about doing it in the past. And so many people gave me passes on it that I do have some room. I don't get too much room because I'm still a jerk a little bit, you know. I don't like people coming in that don't know what the heck they're talking about and just running off at the mouth and not understanding how.
Part of their reason they're able to take advantage of us is the fact that when we're born, it's not like we see each other anywhere, right? We're born in seas of white and black, and they'll go, oh, well, white people hate you, you can't go there. You're kind of stuck with us. It's kind of like as if, and the third is not an option, right? There's no such thing as being bi. There is no biracial. There is no.
How wrong they are, how dangerous what they saying are. But at the same time, I did it too. We all tend to do it because until you know, you don't know. So, a masterpiece of work in the destruction of black civilization. In the destruction of black civilization. So let's do that tonight. Let's talk about this mulatto issue. I'm going to the book that we should all be reading from. Hopefully you can see this. This is a book that every black person should read. If you have not read this book and you want to start chiming in on the mulatto issue, I suggest that you go read this book first so you can understand. The title of this book is The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD. That's 65.
That has all the black people were the real original Egyptians, and has all that. That has all that narrative when you see when they're making like the movies they just made. It's all coming from that book. It has much more. It has a lot more information than you think because it's an underground book. It's not something they really talk about publicly, but they pass along.
By Dr. Chancellor Williams, phenomenal masterpiece of work. And I want people to understand the theme of this book is that integration is the key element in the destruction of black civilization. That unwillingness for black people to separate ourselves from others and keep others out of our environment has destroyed us. And part of that has to do with the creation of the mulatto. Let's talk about it. Let's go to our book by Dr. Chancellor Williams. It's affectionately called The Black Bible in African Nationalist Circles. Go to page 71. It says The Mulatto Problem. The recent revival of Black is Beautiful is no more than that, a revival. The great majority of ancient black people took great pride in their color, and their resistance to amalgamation, which is race mixings or creation of mulattoes, may be so interpreted. For one thing they observed in ancient Kemet was that a dynasty, meaning a family, the ruling class, began as
they're talking about what?
All black could remain unbroken over generations and still in the end become near white in color and not a black face in the royal lineage. This two-way process of intermingling and direct aggression meant victory for the white Asians in the end. This is how the Asiatics conquered us. Are you listening? For the brothers and sisters that were debating earlier, listen. This is how African civilization was destroyed. A dual process again. This two-way process of intermingling and direct aggression meant victory for the white Asians in the end. They were already within the country as Egyptians,
We got to be careful about their labeling when they because they don't want to use the white labeling. They use their own words to refer to groups, so sometimes it's hard to know who they're talking about, right? They name them according to their benefit, like they don't use the same names for.
When the conquering hordes, which was their families, from their various homelands swept in, many were nationalistic.
For them, white Asians might be that they're white and they come from Asia, the continent of Asia.
Egyptians, and as such fought the invaders along with the Africans. Others, though, born in Egypt also, were loyal to their fathers' native countries and sided with their armies. So what are we saying here? For brothers and sisters out there who say, oh, well, you know, for mulattoes, it's different. It makes a difference if it's the mother is black. Well, this is not actually true. Because what we see here is that in ancient Kemet, those kingdoms fell when the fathers were white and the mothers were black. So well, actually, that wasn't always the case, because sometimes it was the fathers were black and mothers were white. And the mothers were black and the fathers were white. But also in Haiti, the fathers were white, and the mulattoes destroyed Haiti, as we'll talk about in a moment. So I just want to make it clear that this is part of the destruction.
Haiti is very important to the overall world history of mulattoes. It's significant, especially for them, right? And what's next side? What's right beside of it? Where they're trying to get into right now? They're trying to make them identify as black, but they don't want to. The Dominican Republic right now, yeah, they're constantly, because they're mixed, but they're pulling the whole, like they're partly black, so they should identify as black, or that they're running away from their blackness, and therefore you should open up the border for Haiti and basically let all black people in. It's like but the way that they're guilting them, they're trying to make it like
destruction of black civilization. Let's go to page 208. Again, this is Dr. Chancellor Williams. He says, in considering the flowering of learning in West Africa and its brutal interruption by the Moors. Now, this is another thing that I'm not going to get in this tonight, but we have to have a real discussion, because people keep talking.
Not too long ago, you would have heard a lot of talk about the Moors, about black people being Moors, which was another, turned out to be not true, but something they believed for a long time. They would have argued that the Moors faded out by the same process, that they became white, that the black men mixed with the French and I guess the Spanish woman, and eventually they became mulatto and they took over. That's what they believe. The Moors became mulatto.
Talking about the Moors and the Moors, to some degree, in some respects, one could argue that the individuals that are classified as the Moors in ancient Africa really were some of the worst race traders we can possibly bring up in terms of a group. Now, we know that's not true for all individuals that were considered Moors, but the reality of it is, as Chancellor Williams breaks down in his book, their efforts in the destruction of black civilization cannot be overstated. Meaning it couldn't have been done without the assistance of those blacks that are called Moors.
Now, this guy Chancellor, this book is a project that where this is coming from, that's way too big for any one man. He's like a very limited team, him and a few, helpers to try to map out the entire history of Africa and everywhere from that long and be able to have one fully detailed story from you. That's just impossible. That's impossible. There's no way he had and back then with even less technology, there's just no way anybody could accomplish that, what he wants to accomplish, what he claims to accomplish, and put in one book. You can't. It's not possible. It's just not possible. There's no way he would have the means. So a lot of it is, I do think a lot of it is made up, and there's no quality control. Like, one of the problems in the black community and black history when they're doing their own research and stuff is that there's no quality control, right? He's taking what the other guy is saying for word. He's not looking at it thinking critically. He's not thinking, well, how did he get this knowledge? Where would he get this? How would he even know this? None of that. It just says it, therefore it's true. And I think too many people, even in these spaces, have been like that, right? Somebody is saying it, therefore it's true. There's no pushback. There's no questioning. And that stuff.
Considering the flowering of learning in West Africa and its brutal interruption by the Moors, certain important facts should stand out because they run through the entire field of black history. The first and perhaps the most important fact is that the general enslavement of Africans, proclaimed to the world as savages, began during the very period and in the very West Africa, the center of which held one of the greatest universities of the world and other colleges. So he's saying at the same time they're saying we're savage, we were the most learned people in the world, which means they knew we weren't savage. It was an attempt to say that we were savage and use black-skinned people called the Moors, who didn't see themselves as Africans and our brothers and sisters, to help and assist in the destruction of black civilization. That's powerful. Meaning the whites could not destroy.
Is that true, though? Is it true that the most advanced possible library and like university, I don't know what they would consist of back then, was by black people? Is that even true, though? That they had is that true? This is, I think, supposed to be based in them owning Egypt, and in Egypt, like, sounds like something like the Library of Alexandria, right? Which is actually the theme, unintentionally. That's actually the theme that I have back here right now, right? We take Alexandria, right? It's an Alexandria theme. It's supposed to be in that library. But the question is, what was it ever really black? There is, when you look in the pyramids, there is a picture like people that do look black, but they often tend to look like more like servants, right?
Destroy us without our complicity, or people of our skin complexion, but not our African mind. They could not have done it without them. The second important fact is that black Muslims were not spared from destruction by non-black Muslims. In other words, these Moors who were Muslim, when the whites took over, even they were destroyed. So, and if you were Muslim, it didn't mean anything. You were black. It was about race, not about.
So they're calling Arabs, I think, white here. That's got to watch out, because we wouldn't say that. But they're just like white people have overgeneralized all black people as black people. Like, they're different races, but they kind of like those black and those white, and you're black. Same thing here with the black people, where they're generalizing other races as white when they're not white and wouldn't consider themselves white, right?
Religion, which our people still don't get today.
I think he's talking about like Arabs. White, what he means by white Asian is white people on the continent of Asia, right? Which would have been like Arab people.
The third all-important fact.
They think Chinese are white too, so like, let's be careful.
Was the non-enslavement of mulattoes and their classification as white Egyptians and Moors.
Mulatto Northern Light says, it's like a web of stories and rumors that keeps getting things add on with no pushback, and anyone can come in. Yes, and that's exactly what's going on, and it continues throughout the community over years and times. It's all races have that to a certain extent. They all got a little bit of it. They all have these, like, they have certain stories that they just tend to travel with an explanation. They're just not true. They get reinforced, and right, and of course, even with the whole color, it's the whole thing is like that. But it's been a specific issue with specifically black people, more so particular from the U.S. making claims off other groups that they didn't belong to, like, right, like in the world, like the Moors, like right, or that. So
the mixed breed were not classified.
Cleopatra was black.
As black people, they weren't enslaved. The mulattoes were allowed to be a managing and ruling class over us. He goes on and says, this crucial.
He goes on to say, his source and facts is that guy. That doesn't cite any facts. He doesn't cite anything. He just tells a story. Like, from the beginning to the end, there's no, like, references. There's no, it's just him telling this. He's just saying that this is what it is. This is that. And I did all this. But he doesn't really prove it. You just have to take his word for everything. And he takes his word for everything. And the reason why it sucks is because what they're trying to do is they can't, because white people can't help them, because if they were to help them, then it would be a conflict of interest, right? So they have to do without white people, but white people have the most advanced and established means of working out history, just by the fact that there's competition within the group where, like, other white people are going to try to outdo another white person and prove him wrong because they want to make the money and take the credit. And so because you have that system, it's more likely to self-correct. It can self-correct, whereas this one doesn't have that so much. There's no quality control. This could be any guy off the street who doesn't have an education. He's just passing on this information, right? It's not systematic.
The fact must not be glossed over, as it has been throughout our history. First, because there were many tribes or societies in Africa which were exclusively mulatto, to use the term loosely. Nothing was more characteristic of the mixed breed clans, tribes, or societies than their unceasing efforts to emphasize their separate identity and their constant fear of being considered Negroes or Black Africans.
Now, hear how he kind of like, does that sound like a normal statement, or does that sound like somebody who's like really going over the top, trying to exaggerate, right? There's nothing more like that demarcates them more than the fact that they didn't want to be black, that they didn't want everything to do with blackness. Or is it, right, this is the same kind of like mentality they have with like the Dominican Republic. Oh no, it's because, no, what's happening is they're harassing them and saying you're black, and they're saying we're not black, and then they're saying that because they wanted to be their own group, that was the strongest thing is they just didn't want to be black, and that was hatred of black. I don't know. Because even in the writing, a professional writer wouldn't write like that.
Fear from destruction by non-Black Muslims. In other words, these Moors who were Muslims to govern the Dominican Republic. And they wanted to show that they were more into enslaving Black people than even the whites.
Oh my God! Oh God! Listen,
to emphasize their separate identity. Fear from destruction by non-Black Muslims. In other words, these Moors who were Muslim, when the whites took over, even they were destroyed. So, and if you were Muslim, it didn't want. They wanted. They can tell you with the blood on their backs of that. So, I'm gonna say that again. Nothing was more characteristic of the mixed breed clans, tribes, and societies than their unceasing efforts to emphasize their separate identity. Hence, I'm a Moor. I'm not black. I'm a Moor. Y'all have heard that before? I'm a Moor. I'm Moor. I'm not African.
Because they're calling them black. They're going around saying, "Hey, you're black." And they're saying, "Well, I'm not black." And then they're then, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They recognize for being that because of the fact that you're telling them they're black and they're not. And that's the same thing what's happening with the Dominican Republic. Haiti's trying to do that as an excuse to cross the border and get in and saying, well, look, because you somehow, it's like, no, it's not the same. We're mixed. We're mulatto. We're proud to be in our mixed mulatto.
And I'm not black. I'm Moor.
And part of us being our own group, it's going to require a bit of meanness, a bit of, hey, yeah, we got to make the line. We got to cut the line. You know, a lot of them are not going to come. That's fine. They're not going to survive.
Separate identity and their constant fear of being considered Negroes or Black Africans. Hence, their over-anxious crusades or jihads against Black states and their spearheading most of the slave trades in Africa. They further emphasize their ethnic difference by always retaining thousands of Black slaves in their own service while selling the others.
Give me a break. Like, does that sound like somebody who's being honest, or sound like somebody who's trying to stack as much evil on that as possible? Northern Light says, right, I absolutely loved it when the news Bassem Youssef talked about Cleopatra with Piers Morgan. Yep. But did you hear the way that like, you know, you could just hear certain statements are just stacked so much with crap that it's like, man, come on, man. You can feel the hate off that guy when he's writing that, like how much he's trying to like put like.
They can tell you with the blood on their backs of that. So I'm gonna say that again. Nothing was more characteristic of the mixed breed clans, tribes, and societies than their unceasing efforts to emphasize their separate identity. Hence, I'm a Moor. I'm not black. I'm a Moor. Y'all have heard that before? I'm a Moor. I'm Moor. I'm not African. I'm not black. I'm Moor. Separate identity and their constant fear of being considered Negroes or Black Africans. Hence, their over-anxious crusades or jihads against Black states and their spearheading most of the slave trades in Africa. They further emphasize their ethnic difference by always retaining thousands of Black slaves in their own service while selling the others. We're talking about the mulattoes now. The mixed breeds, they wanted to show that they were more into enslaving Black people than even the whites. The whites.
Did they? Now, he's from somebody who's exaggerating, and then what does he do? Now he takes an exaggeration, and now he exaggerates even further. Right? So now you have this double exaggeration from the original source.
By driving his offsprings as a wedge into the Black race, is only able to keep it weak by keeping it divided. Is not only able to keep it weak by keeping it divided, but he is able to maintain effective control over it without the necessity of his presence. The most murderous of the mulatto slave traders was Tipu Tib, with his slave empire headquarters in Zanzibar. So basically what he says, he's saying that it's a brilliant.
That's a fact check. We're gonna have to do after that. I'm gonna mark that. A little bookmark there. Gotta fact check that one.
Strategy for the whites to use the mulattoes, because they don't actually have to be there. They have the mulattoes who look like us and have a little bit of our personality because they're part of us, a little bit of our vibe and the way we operate, but they have a European mind and a hatred, a deep-seated hatred and a desire to prove their hatred through being more brutal and repressive of African people than their white mothers and fathers.
Okay.
The whites don't even have to be there once they put the mulatto class.
What's that? But what's the motive? It didn't make any sense. Why would they be more? If they were part of you, why would it make sense that they would be even more to try to prove how racist? Why would anyone want to prove how much they hate somebody or prove how racist they are? Come on, man. Come on, man. This doesn't even make any sense.
To use the mulattoes because
the
they
idea
don't.
Is that, yeah, we act as a buffer. So basically, you can see here, if you really read into what he's saying that we ruled over them, right? Basically suggesting that white people don't need to be there, right? The mulattoes alone are enough to basically rule over the, right? But it's also try to say that we don't. It's only because we're white people. It's only because we have this privilege. I'm just, you know. But there's a difference between how he's interpreting it, or what could really be the difference. Assuming there is one.
Actually have to be there. They have the mulattoes who look like us and have a little bit of our personality because they're part of us.
There's no
a little bit of our vibe and the way we operate, but they have a European mind and a hate.
You just gotta trust this other black guy who's everything he would talk about would be against anti-mulatto. He was on his like grave or something negative about mulattoes on his grave. Right.
They wanted to show that they were more into enslaving black people than even the whites. The whites, by driving his offsprings as a wedge into the black race, is only able to keep it weak by keeping it divided. Is not only able to keep it weak by keeping it divided, but he is able to maintain effective control over it without the necessity of his presence. The most murderous of the mulatto slave traders was Tipu Tib, with his slave empire headquarters in Zanzibar. So basically what he says, he's saying that it's a brilliant strategy for the whites to use the mulattoes because they don't actually have to be there. They have the mulattoes who look like us and have a little bit of our personality because they're part of us, a little bit of our vibe and the way we operate, but they have a European mind and a hatred, a deep-seated hatred and a desire to prove their hatred through being more brutal and repressive of African people than their white mothers and fathers, that the whites don't even have to be there once they put the mulatto class in control of the larger black masses, as the case is in Dominican Republic. You don't need any whites to govern the Dominican Republic.
He went right to the Dominican Republic, right? Right to there. So they're looking at this in a modern sense, not just then. He's taking that and he's projecting that in the future. He says like that now, like that behavior can be seen now. He goes to Haiti, right?
Because the sickness and illness of the mulatto class in the Dominican Republic is such that they hate black people all of themselves, but they don't need anybody to help them do that. And our Haitian brothers and sisters are having quite a time with our brothers and sisters. Or you know, we got to ask the question: are they brothers and sisters in Dominican Republic because of their identification with them to be anything other than African people?
Because Haiti it's not doing well. It's not doing as well as the Republic, right? It's doing a lot better, and so therefore it's a white supremacy thing kind of thing. They want to be white.
This is real talk here. We're having real conversation tonight. And if you're a brother or sister who's from Dominican Republic, I'd appreciate it if you call up because we could definitely hear your point on what you would have to say. Now we're going to go and take a look at a few more things and do a little bit more research into this because we're not quite done just yet, brothers and sisters. Let's study this a little deeper. We go back to our book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. And I want to be clear. This is not about hating mulattoes or a misappropriation of understanding who the enemies to African people are.
That doesn't make you feel better as a mulatto. Okay, at all. This doesn't make you feel better as a mulatto.
So I want to be very clear about that. What we're talking about now is, yeah, it's one thing to say, yes, I understand the whites are enemies. Yeah, that sounds good. But then the question I would ask you is, well, how do they operate and how do they keep black people oppressed? And if you can't give me an articulate, in-depth explanation that includes how they create mulatto classes to keep us oppressed and ultimately exterminate our race, if you can't talk about that, then you're not properly armed. Tonight you need.
There's only one answer. There could only be one explanation in order for you, right? It must be explained through the mulatto. No other explanations, no other better explanations that have less presumptions. Right? This is the guy that really hated us. He's left that legacy that everybody else is reading too.
Need to get armed. All right, let's talk about Dr. Chancellor Williams from page 310. The necessary re-education of Black people and a possible solution to the racial crisis can only begin when Black people fully recognize this central fact in all of our lives. The white race is our bitter enemy. I'm going to say that again. The white race is our bitter enemy. This is the calm and unmistakable verdict of several thousands of years of documented history where each and every Black nation has been destroyed by whites. Now that is true. Whites, with the assistance of mulatto classes that they create, and those whites include Asiatics and other groups. So let's continue to go on with this.
So we're white people's secret weapon to destroy them, in other words.
Yes. What does he say on page 75? To prove how truly white they were, the mixed mulatto Egyptians made hatred of Africans a ritual and tried to surpass the whites in raiding for slaves in all African areas. Various mulattoes who became Egyptian kings declared eternal warfare against Black people and vowed to enslave the entire race. That's page 75. And if you want more of this, you can go on warnhorizon.com. You can go to
more of this, but no evidence. Just more of this guy telling you that that's what it is on a podium by himself. All of Africa, the whole history, he's kind of been able to go all across a huge continent. That's a huge continent. Been able to track all of it. This is impossible, man. It's impossible. To prove how truly white they were, and this is a common exaggeration I hear even in when I was reading the book today regarding Blue Vein Society. And it was the same kind of exaggerated writing. I can tell it's them. Like, to prove how truly white they were, but they're not white. So why would they be trying to prove? I guess that's the idea, that they have to prove that they're first side. But the mixed Egyptians were on top. Why would they need white people? Okay, I believe, like, why can't the mixed people Egyptians just dominate on their own? Why do there have to be? It's because of white people from some distant. It's to not give us credit. It's to make it sound like the only reason we possibly could ever have done well is because we're being assisted by the white people. To not think of ourselves as performing well personally.
The store, the One Horizon store, and you can purchase Death by Lethal Integration. You can get a much better in-depth explanation of this particular information we're going through here. He goes on to say on page 295, the mulatto has been the white man's most effective agent in helping destroy Black civilizations. I'm gonna say it again. The mulatto, the individual who has a white mother or a white father and a Black mother or Black father. So they half and half. He didn't say that some of them helped. He said has been the white race's most effective agent in helping destroy Black civilizations. In other words, who do they go to first when they're trying to destroy Black civilizations? The mulatto. Who do they create in order to destroy Black civilization? Mulatto. Barack Insane Obama, perfect example. Page 295, he says, relying on the concept of being innately superior to Black people. Whites everywhere.
Barack Insane Obama. And see how they have him up here on this little chair, and they have him like he's gay. They have him because that's how they keep. These are the people that portray us as gay the most. Mixed people, right? He's sitting like a little boy. Like his art's on the ground, his butt's there, and he has this little triangle underneath. Like, it's just funny. I like the magical mulatto.
Means all around the world created a class system that made their bastard offsprings next to them in status and superior to all Black people. Meaning, hey, if I rape your wife, whatever is produced is a little bit better than what you are, because I'm white and they got a little bit of me in them. Where as African people, the ones of us that love ourselves, is the exact opposite. We don't want nothing to do with you.
Is that what they're saying though, or is that so? That's another one that seems to, like, I'm not sure. Is this is their interpretation, or is it that we just performed differently? We just did perform better on average, right? I would argue, well, if you look right now, and you look at, like I said, if you look at top of the academia of black people, it's disproportionately us. It's not necessarily. Would that still be the case? I don't know if that would still explain that.
And it's unfortunate that someone had to have the negative experience and a harrowing experience of having any kind of sexual exchange with any European in the history of the world. For us, it's the most ugly thing that could possibly occur. But for the Europeans, they create the mulatto for the purpose of undermining black civilization. When you see a class of mulattoes beginning to rise, you are now looking at open warfare. You are about to face assault. Like I told everybody back in 2008, Barack Obama is your enemy. He is coming. Prepare. He is going to wage war on the.
Did you guys expect that, right? That famous part that I was my favorite part. He's gonna wage war against who? So the idea is, yeah, we're gonna rise and we're gonna wage war against the other races, basically, particularly black people. That's the presumption whenever we grow.
In the history of the world,
it's important to not look like that.
For us, it's the most ugly thing that could possibly occur. But for the Europeans, they create the mulatto for the purpose of undermining black civilization. When you see a class of mulattoes beginning to rise, you are now looking at open warfare. You are about to face assault. Like I told everybody back in 2008, Barack Obama is your enemy. He is coming. Prepare. He is going to wage war on the African continent. He's going to promote homosexuality throughout America and throughout the African continent. You can talk to the brothers and sisters who I was talking to back in 2008, 2009.
And racial nationalists, they see that there is a threat. There's the same reason why they're not is somewhat to the reason I'm doing it through reason, but their intuition is the same. And I'm not as harsh as them, but I know that it's not good for a group like that. It kind of hurts our cohesion, especially our family cohesion, which is necessary, because they think the opposite, right? And they don't care about race as much, so they don't value that as much.
You can even go online for free and watch the video Nat Turner Rising. Put it in. Go to Irritated Genie Speaks. Watch it. I told you in 2009 who he was and what was going to happen. I'm not saying it to brag or anything. I'm just saying I actually believe the history and live it. Some of our people read the books, but then they don't give you the full story. Everything that I know that I should give you to help you, I'm going to give you.
So their history, according to them, predicts any moment now, like that this is going to happen to them, right? That's what they're looking for. They're like, oh, do they see biracials? They see us in, movies, or see us in too many positions of power. We're talking like, they're suspect. It's happening now. What they believe is happening now is what's happened throughout history, right? What happened in Egypt, right? They think that's like what's happening right now. And of course, it's a conspiracy by white people.
So I'm not talking about Barack Obama now. I was talking about him before he did what he did. I'm telling you now, the mulattoes are here and they're dangerous. And we have to prepare to deal with them, but we have to do it wisely. And the first step, I realized I got to make people aware of the danger of them, who they are, how they operate. What is the mulatto class all about? Let me make this clear. We're going to go look at a short clip from a movie called Rabbit Proof Fence. This is going to be very important for our brothers and sisters, because I want you to understand the mulatto class is made as a step in the direction of the genocide of African people. Let me say it again. As Dr. Chancellor Williams said, first the whites came in and mixed. We allowed them to mix and create these mixed babies. Missing and not understanding the interests of whites. Their objective is to kill us. Then they use those white babies or those mulatto babies to wage war against us.
To take over.
And then ultimately, they use them to now marry back on into whiteness and totally eliminate the black groups altogether.
Okay.
This has been history. Okay. Let's go to Australia, where they had a process of doing.
Be careful, because this is a very famous piece of. It's a movie clip. It's passed around the black community a lot. Nonetheless, it's important to note that it's not necessarily. It is a movie, and it's dramatic, and it's concerning racism in that country, and of course they sinisterize the white people a little bit. But it is a movie, and it is like, just remember it is. But I can see why they were doing this.
It was actually a formal process,
because they had in that book, The Superior of the Mulatto. They're considering doing that here too, right? Their conclusion is that black people, at least pure black people, as they are dark skinned, as they are, can't get better, and the only way they can make them even be able to integrate and be able to survive in a white society is if they're mixed. That's the right. So they're thinking that the only way we can make them, the only way we can actually fix the problem is they have to be mixed. Right?
It exterminated and killed most of the brothers and sisters in Australia, the original African inhabitants, and now they were in a process of killing the last ones of them. And they had an actual process that was government sponsored called interbreeding us out of existence, saying we don't want to kill them anymore. Is not enough of them to fight back, so we don't have to physically kill them. We'll just exterminate them through incorporating them into our racial structure. But
it's important to note that these people, and I've read some of the literature, they didn't really have a bad intention. It sounds horrible, of course, from the perspective that you'd be wiped out of people, but their intention wasn't actually bad. Their intention was, well, how else do we fix the problem, right? We can see a difference no matter what. It seems it's not changing. We see a difference in performance, and we see that when we do mix them, that mixed child does almost as good as everybody else, as the white people, right? Yet when we have the black people, they don't perform. So they're trying to think, well, how. The idea was, in this case, was the only way we can save them. The only way we can save them was to do that, right? Right? And they're talking about, these are not black people. They're called black there. This was very important. They're called black in that country, in Austria, but they're not. They're much older, a much older species than black. They're much older. Yeah,
they speak the language, and so we weren't totally trusting them, but we kind of trusted them. They
lost my space there. Find you guys.
Are a white people. In other words, they said we're going to kill them by destroying them genetically, and literally they did it in certain regions.
We're going to destroy them. They have big evil, like that's I guess the next person. Big evil. I gotta find my space, guys. Where I left off.
Now they were in a process of killing the last ones of them, and they had an actual process that was government sponsored. Called interbreeding us out of existence, saying we don't want to kill them anymore. Is not enough of them to fight back, so we don't have to physically kill them. We'll just exterminate them.
They didn't say that.
Through incorporating them into our racial structure. But the white male here,
incorporating them to their structure. That's what they were trying to do. They to get to
this is actually a document. It's a movie about the reality of what was done in Australia, and here's the white telling the story of how they did it.
As you know, every Aborigine born in this state comes under my control. Notice, if you will, the half-caste child, and there are ever-increasing numbers of them. Now, what is to happen to them? Are we to allow the creation of an unwanted third race? Should the coloreds be encouraged to go back to the black? Or should they be advanced to white status? And
okay, this is why colored is not a good word for us, right? Because this is a completely different race of black people. They're darker. I wouldn't say they're as black as black people. Do you know the name Fairy? Pixie? I keep thinking you would know that, but I said it before. They're like more Eastern Islander type. They're like that gene. They come from like the Eastern Island direction, and they're like more like that than they are like black people. But so when you just say color, be careful. You're just throwing in all kinds of people in there. The colors in Africa are not the same as us. We are West African white mostly. They are all kinds of the different shaped African types that are not our types.
Be absorbed in the white population.
Mixed with pygmy.
Now, time and again, I am asked by some white men, if I marry this colored person, will our children be black? And as Chief Protector of Aborigines, it is my responsibility to accept or reject those marriages. Here is the answer. 3 generations. Half-blood grandmother, quadroon daughter, octoroon grandson. Now, as you can see, in the 3rd generation, or 3rd cross, no trace of native origin is apparent. The continuing infiltration of white blood finally stamps out the black color. The Aboriginal...
Now genes work, it doesn't stamp out. But if you look at that too, that's not like that. That's not our kind biracial. That's the Aboriginal and a white person. They're not as dark as we. Their biracials are not as dark as we are.
Has simply been bred out.
This is a movie, and it's made to be where they're sinister, or the white people are sinister. In the when I've read like the articles and stuff, the intention is not like this. They wouldn't say anything about stamping out, but the idea is that they needed to be saved from themselves. And slavery, the whole concept, that a lot of that was built in that ideology around slavery, that they were better off because, now I'm not saying that's true at all, but what I'm trying to give you is how they would have thought of it, right? They would have thought, like, on their own, they're going to kill themselves, they're going to just, right, they're better off this way because they won't, right? They won't be as brutal to each other.
We come to the Moore River Native Settlement. Ladies, most of you are familiar with our work here, the training of domestic servants and farm laborers. I would like to thank you for your continuing support. Hundreds of half-caste children have been gathered up and brought here to be given the benefit of everything our culture has to offer. For if
part of the reasoning, okay, would also been that it would be their genius to culture would have been a much more stronger thought back then. So they would say, well, look, black people create, well, what's in Africa, basically, and we have this. Well, and so the idea was that if we let them dominate, it's going to turn like Africa, right? And we don't want that. We see that as at the time they would have said the lowest form of the world. They would have seen the least developed culture, and so the only way to get them was to, of course, change them. That's their reasoning behind it.
we are to fit and train such children for the future, they cannot be left as they are. And in spite of himself, the native must be helped.
So we see here the description of helping is creating mulatto classes that ultimately begin to breed us out as a race of people. I want people to understand this is not just...
That is a side effect, but that's not the way they were thinking of it. They were thinking of it, well, now they're adjustable and they can actually...
Yes, this here is not just like...
They don't have to... their culture will now be safe. It's not going to be all the way reduced to what they would consider African culture.
Some random clip that's done out of somebody's mind in fiction. This is actually based on documented reality. Remember, we're talking about our brothers and sisters in West Papua that they're trying to do the exact same thing to do now. It's actually West Papua. They told me, my wife was telling me I was mispronouncing it, but when I talked to the brothers and sisters, they were like, no, keep saying Papua. We like that because we got to fight back. So we like the way you're saying it, And they said a lot of other people that heard me saying it. So now I guess we stuck with West Papua. But, my brothers and sisters in West Papua, they're facing the same thing now, right in the same region. So with the brothers and sisters in Bougainville, it's the same thing all over the world. It's the same thing that happens. When they can't beat you militarily, or when they do beat you militarily, part of the extermination genocide process is the mulattoization of the group and then a full extermination. That's the final part of the process. They're like vampires. They like to take some of the...
Like vampires. Oh, no. Okay, give me a quick sec. I gotta fix that. And look at the way he's talking about them like vampires. Is it even because it's something white people are conspiring to do? Because most races, white people don't want to mix? Or is it just a natural process of when you start living in the same proximity? You're just in a proximity of another race that inevitably you start race mixing just by virtue of proximity, and it turns into that. I don't believe that it's ever been the case that that white people have specifically tried to breed a class of mulattoes for their benefit, but rather it was just a natural side effect. We're like, what are we going to do with all these mulattoes? Like over time, where they just get to growing, and they're like, well, what are we going to do with all these mulattoes? I don't believe, right? I don't believe that there necessarily was like a. I do believe in South America where there was people that were brought there to make it white, kind of, but like not directly. It was just that, well, if we bring more white people here, it's going to get more white. Common sense. Okay. Quick break, guys. Quick second. Just going to fix that behind the scenes. but it's a leftist, right? It's a leftist movie.
What we do is we just basically
has simply been.
I guess we stuck with West Papal, but you know, my brothers and sisters in West Papal, they're like vampires. They like to take some of the genetic makeup of our people and incorporate that into themselves. Now, I just want to show this because I want to take it around the world because I don't want people getting stuck and saying, why is he stuck in ancient Kemet, you know, or that's Australia, he's just sticking in the east side. That's not
a bad thing even for black people. Like, without white admixture, black people can't consume milk. They can't consume milk sugar. They get diarrhea, right? So that's a big evolutionary advantage to be able to drink milk versus not being that historically. And they have a disproportionate sickle cell that takes away their sickle cell too.
A reality of black people in this hemisphere, not true. When we talk about Theodore Roosevelt in 1914, he went to Brazil, and basically he was talking to the white president there about, you know, basically we got a black problem, these black people. What do we do with our black problem? And the president of Brazil
Notice how he says
well,
black problem.
What we do,
they say mulatto problem.
Is we just basically get rid of the black people, but we don't do it through your means because basically he said when you segregate black people in America, you create more problems. Because they are forced to rely on one another and they develop a camaraderie, and then you have a stronger group to have to fight. He said, we get rid of them simply by breeding them on to lighter ones. He said, and you look at the Brazilians and say, are we white? He said, yeah, we still white. We've just basically bred them out through our system, just like what you just saw. In his book, SBA, page 27, is the Reawakening of the African Mind by our brother, Dr. Asa Hilliard, peace be upon him. He said, in Brazil, the idea looked forward to is the disappearance of the Negro question through the disappearance of the Negro himself. That is through his gradual absorption into the white race. The Brazilians are a white people. In other words, they said, we're going to kill them by destroying them genetically. And literally they did it in certain regions where they were all black people. I mean, 100% jet black. And they convinced each of them that you had no value being dark. You had to be with somebody lighter. So all of the brothers wanted light women. All of the women wanted white males. And so they all went out and married onto white. It within a generation and a half.
I suppose because the colonialism caught them to do that, and that's how you got colorism. But of course, the leftists right now would say that this guy is buying into the white supremacy lie about the racial purity, right? That's what they would say. And like that there's no such thing as a pure, so therefore everybody should be mixed kind of thing, as if it was that stupid. Everybody should be mixed. That's what they would push on them saying that.
it went from being 85% black to like 15% black or 20% black. Something like that. It was just, the whole population of black people was destroyed. And their identity was destroyed. And their racial character, if you look at them, you wouldn't say they were black anymore. Killed entire groups that way without one bullet being shot. So this is a universal concept and idea that's being done all around the world. Even if we look at just locally in terms of our cities, and I can tell you right here in Washington, D.C., I grew up in Washington, D.C. It was 85% black. It was somewhere between 75 and 80% black when I was growing up. We felt like it was all black because unless you went down by the White House or down by the Capitol, it was black. Or you went up Rock Creek Park and all that stuff. And even there, like, unless it was police, we ruled on the street. Now, they ruled everything else. They owned all the businesses and all that stuff. But we had little areas, we had little stuff. But the bottom line is, on the streets, we ruled because we outnumbered them, and there was nothing they could say wrong to us. Any slightest form of disrespect in D.C., a white boy was getting smacked. If he get anywhere near us and he had a bike, that's how we went bike shopping. We snatched him up. We got our reparations. It was a city that was a little different under Marion Barry. But when they...
That's how they get reparations? Act as thugs and just steal from people, that's the reparations. Great. But I guess this is a guy they consider a traitor, like a mulatto traitor. They hate this guy.
They brought the mulattoes in, Anthony, the homosexual mulattoes, first starting with Anthony, I forget his name, and then this mulatto, Adrian Fenty. He completely destroyed the black population from the top, not from the ground level, but he destroyed the black intellectual and government infrastructure of Washington, D.C., such that it was easy to get rid of our people because now the laws that would need to be passed to make it okay to shut down projects and things of that nature were able to be done. Let me give you an idea of what he did. Here's Adrian Fenty comes in, the police chief, Brother Ramses. He's up in Philadelphia now, and I ain't much on no police at all, but I gotta say, as far as I've heard of police chiefs, from what I knew from him in D.C., he's a pretty cool dude. I mean, just if you're going to have a police chief, this would be the dude you want. He didn't seem to be no dude that just had an out for black people like that. Who did they replace it with? Kathy Lanier. Then you had the fire chief, was a black man. Who did they replace it with? White male here. School superintendent, black man. Who did they replace it with? Asian female. None of which of these whites or Asiatics were more competent than the black people that were in office.
Is what he even saying is true? Does this even amount to a conspiracy necessarily? Like, or is this just coincidence? Like, sometimes it goes, maybe the next one will be black. Like, it's not even good evidence.
Why was it done? Because the mulattoes come in, and even the whites would have came in, wouldn't have went this strong. But the mulatto is white plus. They hate black people plus. They want to
see that. So yeah, we switched everything. They used to say, "Oh, okay, it's the white people are really our enemy." Now they've changed it to like we're even worse than white people. We're white plus. He doesn't hate us though. He's just making us white plus. We're white, like we're all about and extra and some extra. That's it. That's how bad we are. But it's not hate against us. It's the fear against us. The reason why he's doing that white extra is because their fear of us is more. There's more fear of us. There's more fear. Maybe because we have some of what they have, right? Right? They might think that, right? They might see us as a little more versatile. We might say, right? We tend to be good with sports too, right? We tend to like.
To their white parent, how much they're willing to go the extra mile to destroy black people. Here's a prime, living, real-time.
Like their white mom? No way. I find a lot of white moms get ostracized into the black community because the white people don't like them, and they kind of ostracize them from their own communities, ended up kind of taking on that identity. I just can't see. That's why a lot of them end up being activists. A lot of times the other white moms end up being black. It's because they get that treatment, and they're almost, in a sense, kicked out of their own category.
Example, all right? But now, I know you say, well, that's a lot, Brother Genie, you're putting on us. It is. But we're not finished yet. Let me go because I wanna finish this before we go to our phone lines. Let's talk about the Atlantic slave trade. All right, let's talk about the Atlantic slave trade, and I'm gonna show you how you can find this on your own. You go to WarnerHorizon.com, and you'll start off with the beautiful. Matter of fact, let me just do it for 1 second. Just bear with me for a second. I got to show you how this thing is done. First, you put in WarnerHorizon.com. My thing
but they still end up with certain people on their side, like that Zaza woman, right? But these are mulattoes they consider suspect. I don't even know who that is. That's of course Obama. That's who is that? I didn't know that. Biracial woman. She's famous. You keep saying that she's black, but she's not. Oh my god, I can't even think of the word. Fairy, you there? You know this word. What's her name? What's come on, we just talked about her. The most famous biracial actor historically. She's there, anyways. And I don't know who this is. Anybody know who these people are? I know Alicia Keys is up there too.
And automatically forward it to the. Oh, there we go.
With the suspects.
And when you come, you're gonna see, you're gonna get welcomed in to the African world. You know, I love this.
The Wakanda? You're being welcomed into Wakanda.
And once you get welcomed into this African world,
without first asking for permission from the elders.
So that's Brother's Keeper. They just welcoming you in. See all the ancestors around, the fighters, freedom fighters, fighting for liberation of African people. Then you just hit enter. So you can go ahead and enter the website, and it takes you to the home page. Ain't that beautiful? Once you come into the home page, say, look, I'm trying to look for that information Irritated Jenny was talking about. Matter of fact, in July, we're going to have one on the West Papal. So you want to check that one out. This war room is going to be powerful about the genocide that we're going to work to stop. I'm trying to convince the brothers and sisters in the Straight Black Pride movement that this is something we got to take on as a campaign to really help to bring knowledge and understanding of what's happening, but also to bring an end to the Indonesian occupation and the extermination process of our brothers and sisters in West Papal. But you're going to end up going right here to the war room. Because see, this way you want to know about the wars that are going on right now with African people and the relation it has with history, you come right here. And so right now we want to learn about these mulattoes. I'm sure something here about mulattoes. Let me see. I'm sure we got something because we need this information for our people. Ha ha. July 2012. Mulattoes and Lancados.
Oh, I'm going to check that out too. I was going to say something about this, but
what is this about? Now, we talked about during the Arab slave trade. Dr. Chancellor Williams talked about how the
non-facts either. Like even those are just people. Are like somebody said this happened, therefore it happened. There's no quality control in any of this. Unless she think gets mad when I say that, but it's just true. So I can't like it's not like that trustworthy of like a. It's not the same quality
Arabs
of receipts.
Use the black Muslim Moors to help enslave African people in West Africa.
Because of my academic background, I am a quality control. I know at least the bare minimums that you have to have. I know what to make, right? The bare minimums.
And destroy the kingdoms of West Africa.
For it to be taken seriously in other spaces, right? I mean, in academic spaces, inevitably you're going to have to deal with that. Like as you get bigger, you're going to have to deal with the more intelligent arguments. You got right. Your arguments have to be prepared to actually convince somebody who's not already in the group. Not like right. Yes,
those kingdoms had to be destroyed by the Arabs, who were really the field soldiers were the Moors, the black Africans going to war with our brothers and sisters to destroy the powerful African nations, supporting the Arabs and the Europeans are supplying weapons as well, destroying the West African great civilizations in order for the slave trade to begin to prosper and really be born and grow the way it did. But what people don't talk about is about these groups called the Lancados. Who were the actual slave traders that said, hey?
Right, that's where I think, what's it? The black guy with mulatto kids. Anyways, the ex-pimp. He said that it wasn't black people that were doing this. You know, they talk about like that they were sold by black people. They go, it's really the mulattoes and the Lancados. It's really them, but we were just called Lancados in a specific part. It's supposed to be another word for mulatto. Bullshit. That we did all the slave trade. It was us specifically. I can show you proof that that's not the case.
Here's where we're going to go get the brothers and sisters that are going to be enslaved. This is where we're going to take them. This is how their groups work. Who are those individuals? Well, there's a brother from the Nation of Islam. Actually, I'm going to take you to his article real quick because I think it's important. Who wrote this? And I know y'all saying, but you got all these issues with the Nation of Islam. Yeah, I got a lot of issues with the Nation of Islam right now with them promoting this homosexuality stuff. But I got to be honest. This brother.
And this too is very weak. Like all this goes back again to the book, the Destruction of Black Civilization book again. So it's like a circular reference, right? This original sources all goes back to that. So it's not like an extra source, right? For something to be affirmed, like to be validated, it has to come from a different. There has to be multiple sources supporting it, not just the same one that doesn't have a reference. That's just, you have to believe them by faith. How's it? About 2 hours max. On me. Oh, Tariq Nasheed, yeah. Tariq Nasheed says that too.
Tingba Muhammad, June 14, 2012. You've got to read this article. Did African slave traders sell us out? I don't have time to read the whole article, but let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. When you talk about rich history and something that really helps us really see how the war against African great
pinning this on us. So it was us who the mulattoes who were the slave traders.
Greatness and civilization is waged. You did this. You can't do it without this. What he basically breaks down, right here you see a picture of what they call the Judenrats. The Judenrats were the small hats, the white so-called Jews during Nazi Germany. When the Nazis didn't know who the hats were. They couldn't tell hats from Anglos. They didn't know how to tell. So they got a group that was paid. And this group was like, okay, just pay us. They get little stuff when they go in the small hats house, little gold trinkets and stuff like that. And they would snitch on everybody that was small hats. And that's how the Germans knew who to go capture and take to the concentration camps. I mean, they killed like 6,000 Jews in this thing.
I've talked about this myself. Serious. That part of the paranoia in white people about the Jews was because they would intermix. They weren't necessarily pure, and they'd mix with white people. So it was hard to tell who was who because they had the same situation where the people in the middle might act, and they might act like they're also with white people, but they're really on the Jew side, right? This happened in Germany too, the same problem. And we already know how, because of that big Holocaust, they are seen as we see them as all-around victims. Like they have done magnificent achievements in the world. Like they've contributed hugely. Don't get me wrong, but before that, there would have been a long history of negative things before that, right? It's almost like when something happens so bad, now we get to nobody looks at what happened before. Everything else you did before that was like, right? And it's not their fault either. I guess they were originally from Jerusalem, right? They got kicked out of Jerusalem, their original home country, and they've been just bouncing around ever since, right? Until they got what did they have, right? Until they got it back, right? Israel's not Israel, but before that, they've been just roaming from states, from like country to country, other people's country, never having their own country, but at the same time causing a mess in the country, like causing problems, like often taking over the country, like that similar where they end up being at the top in all the different countries they go, they somehow end up at the top. And that when Hitler, it's not justifying anything, but they were accounting for that history, that the fact that they always did that. Similar to this, actually, how they're looking at us, how these black nationals are looking at us. Like I said, we're their Jews. We're their Jews for them. Like they don't know if we're blended in, they don't know if we're on the side. That's how they see us. It's the same way that white nationalists see the Jews. And how Hitler's seen them. So that's why it's actually dangerous, a dangerous situation. But that's what he's explaining here, how it happened in that group. But it did. That's why we're all confused about who Jews are, right? It was like, is it a religion?
I think it was at least 6,000 of them. And they murdered them. But they couldn't have killed none of them, or very few of them. They would have been able to even find if it wasn't for the Jews.
I'd get in trouble maybe for what I said.
Right. Well, the brother goes on to tell us about the Judenrats of the black race, who were actually known as Lancados. Now, who were the Lancados?
The Juden blacks of the race. He called them the Juden, and he called us the Juden blacks of the black race. We're that he made a direct reference to.
It's very deep.
Of the black race, right? Comparing that the Jews to the whites is like mulattoes.
And again, you want to get this article is Did African Slave Traders Sell Us Out? If you put that in, it should pop up. It's written by brother Tingba, T-I-N-G-B-A, Muhammad. He's a guest columnist for the Nation of Islam paper, The Final Call, and it was on June 14, 2012. One of the best articles on the topic I've ever read. And actually, I didn't even know the term Lancado until this, and they put things in such a great perspective. What happened? Prior to the Atlantic slave trade in the 1400s, during the Spanish Inquisition, or right before it, which means they were already planning this, which is really deep. They saw the beginning of the end of the Moors being put out of Spain and Southern Europe. And so the small hats began to start realizing, because they were helping with the financing there, that the whites were going to turn on them anyway. So they started trying to prepare for a shift in the climate. So they said, okay, well, now the Moors are being put out, and now the Europeans are going to arm the Moors, and the Arabs will work with the Moors to attack these powerful African nation states and undermine them. We're going to help and facilitate that process as well and try to bank and make money off of it. So they began to come in on the west coast of Africa, do incursions,
like these stories, like
kidnap black women, just snatch them off the shores, girls and women, take them back to Portugal. These are the small hats, white so-called Jews. Sephardic small hats. These are not the Ashkenazi, these are Sephardic. Took them back to these islands and began to breed them and breed these half-caste children. Okay. But here's the deep part. They taught these children, they forced the mothers to teach these children to speak the local languages. They groomed these children and prepared them to go back onto the continent. And of course, they gave them the wealth and the military power. But
remember, this shit is taught behind the scenes. Even people like Cynthia G and them, they all know this. I've heard them make references, and her friends, I've heard them. They make references. They don't make them directly, but I've heard. Now that you've seen this, you might be able to better spot them when you hear them talk. Yeah, as being the Jews. We're the Jews of the black race, basically. We're their Jew problem. That's what I was trying to say. In the same way that the word elite were on the top, you know how you hear them talk. When you're hearing on the right too, they talk about the elite. They're talking about a lot of Jews, right? They're talking about George Soros is a Jew, right? George Soros is he's elite. He's an elite Jew. He's an elite. That's what they're elite in the sense that he's at the top of the finance, right? Top of the food chain. And we don't really see them that much. Like the way that they act, we can't see them. They're like so above us. We don't. It's like a mystery to the people on the bottom. And there's always these conspiracies. And I think that's why things like the whole Blue Vein Society or even the Mulatto Elite, a lot of that is grounded in their kind of like, they're up, but they can't see up. And when people are talking about Hollywood too, they can't see. They're just kind of like, these Hollywood elites. They don't really know.
They were able to negotiate better with the brothers and sisters because they were half caste. So they could speak the language. And so we weren't totally trusting them, but we kind of.
She's assuming here, like, as if we have a superpower, they could speak to, like, that we were bred specifically. This is just putting fear in black people about us. But this is where also I got the idea of just like mulattophobia, spreading fear about us, which is going to make them always have to make us have to prove how black we are to be a part of it and be under blackness, right? We have to be Malcolm X or some shit.
Trusting them. They got in, they had money, they had power in trade. They learned everything that they needed to know to figure out who was in power, what the differences were amongst the groups. They could communicate. And it was the Lancado.
In fact, in Northern Lights, that's exactly who I had in mind when I was saying that. That's like the exact person I actually was saying.
Who made up the bulk of the slave traders during the Atlantic slave trade, these half-castes. That's why if you watch films like Amistad, horrible film. But when you see that little funny little curly-headed thing, he's a Lancado, half small hat, half black. They are bred by the small hats for the purpose of enslaving our people. So when they say blacks stole blacks into slavery, it's not exactly the case.
For the purpose
there were black people who were race traders that were just purely black.
This is
most of those slave traders.
Their insecurities, because what did he say? Why would it have been better to make them mixed to slave? Because the idea is that they can trick them. He said because they can talk the language and they were better able to outsmart them. That's what it sounds like he's implying, right? That they were more able to get one over because they basically saying that they were nice to them and because they were like really worried. So he's putting all these conspiracies in us, like as
small hat, half black. They are bred by the small hats for the purpose of enslaving our people. So when they say blacks stole blacks into slavery, it's not exactly the case. There were black people who were race traders that were just purely black. There's no question. Most of those slave traders, though, were Lancados, mixed breeds, and Moors who were helping to undermine North Africa and the climate. So they say, okay, well, Now the Moors are being put out back onto the continent. And of course, they gave them the wealth and the military power, but they were able to negotiate better with the brothers and sisters because they were half caste, so they could speak the language. And so we weren't totally trusting them, but we kind of trusted them. They got in, they had money, they had power in trade. They learned everything that they needed to know to figure out who was in power, what the differences were amongst the groups. They could communicate. And it was the Lancados.
They took over, so they came in, they learned, like, he's giving them a lot of credit to say that they just came in, they were able to learn the whole culture and learn who's on top, learn the game, and basically take over. That's what he's saying. He doesn't mean to be saying that, but he's saying that they were trained to do, but he is giving a lot of, like, you know, to us indirectly. That's important. Tells us what they're really thinking and why they're afraid.
Sephardic small hats. These are not the Ashkenazis, these are Sephardic. Took them back to these islands and began back onto the continent. And they asked children. But here's the deep part. They taught these children, they forced the mothers to teach these children to speak the local languages. They groomed these children.
Every time you add in an extra variable, it's less likely to be true. Because all those things have to be true. Every time you add another variable, and without evidence, it's less likely to be true. Because they all have to be true.
And prepared them to go back onto the continent. And of course, they gave them the wealth and the military power, but they were able to negotiate better with the brothers and sisters because they were.
And that could have been a part of it. Like, they didn't want that guy, and so it's like, it didn't even. Now that I think of it, it didn't work out for him. If you think of it, he died, most likely died because of that. It might be less likely to have been killed otherwise.
Half caste, so they could speak the language, and so like, we weren't totally trusting them, but we kind of.
They made us half so we could speak the language, and they weren't
trusting them. They got in. They had money. They had power.
See, we did all this. We did what the Jews did, is what he's saying. We had money. We had power. We came in.
They had power in trade. They learned everything that they needed to know to figure out who was in power.
See
what the differences were amongst the groups. They could communicate, and it was the Lancados who made up the bulk of the slave traders during the Atlantic slave trade. These half castes. That's why if you watch films like
a lot of credibility.
Amistad, horrible film. But when you see that little funny little curly headed thing, he's a Lancado, half small hat, half black. They are bred by the small hats for the purpose of enslaving our people. So when they say blacks stole blacks into slavery, it's not exactly the case. There were black people who were race traders that were just purely black. There's no question. Most of those slave traders, though, were Lancados.
It also presumes like the black women were like also like not willing to have sex. Like a lot of times we always talk about this, we assume like some kind of rape, but technically, I mean, people got attracted to people. That's the climate they were in. It was normal. It wouldn't work like that. I'm sure a lot of some women who wanted to get down. I'm sure there definitely was.
Moors who were helping to undermine North Africa, who were either mixed or considered themselves Arabs. So whatever they considered themselves, they were not black. That's what I'm saying. It's real dangerous when you hear black people today. Now, I don't want to be black. Don't use that term for me. I'm not an African. Don't use that term. I've been looking at it. Well, I've heard that before in history, and it wasn't good for us. So I want you to understand it's very important because we're talking about the Atlantic slave trade could not have happened.
When we're not identifying, they don't like that because that means we're their enemy. What's her name? Like, one of you guys got to get this. Right? You know, everybody like. Do you know Northern Lights? Not a trick question. I just have that, you know, the tip of tongue phenomenon.
Without the mulattoes. I'm just making it simple. It couldn't have happened without them. Period. And we look here and we see some of the Lancados during this period. Avery and Fenty, Holly Berry, the big homosexual here. Yeah. I think his name is Amici, the big gay football player, basketball player, whichever one he is. Dominique DePrima. I mean, Ben Jealous, Henry Jewish Gates. All of these half castes putting themselves in the place of black people, none of which represent the interests of our people, basically selling the complete interests of African people out. Very dangerous what's going on here. This is happened in history, but if we don't have access and knowledge of that history, then we don't understand. You can go here and read this for yourself in your own free time. You want to watch this, a 26-minute video. This is the great one, Dr. Chancellor William, peace be upon him, on Tony Brown's Journal. You can watch that video. You'll really appreciate that.
He's the king of the mulatto haters. He's put that tradition of hating mulattoes throughout.
The brother has to say to us.
The minds of black
but we're going to come down here to Dr. John Henry Clarke now, because now we're going to talk about not just in ancient history or not even just in the Atlantic slave trade. What about in the Haitian Revolution? If people were to understand the roles that the mulattoes played in the undermining of black self-interest in America, but specifically in the islands, in particular in Haiti, you would almost feel like our brother Edward Blyden, who said Edward Blyden was one of the great black nationalists prior to Brother Garvey's time in the early 1800s. Brother I think it was 1700s. Brother Edward Blyden said, I think it was 1800s, but Brother Edward Blyden said, on my tombstone, only thing I want you to put is he hated mulattoes. Now, he didn't say that based on no complexion. I want people to get this.
On his tombstone. He wanted to put on his tombstone that he hated mulattoes, just to make sure.
Because it's very important. A complexion has nothing to do with the discussion. It just so happens that most mulattoes are lighter. But so
I'm almost done here. Just a few more minutes and I'm out of here, guys. Hope you had a good time. I think I did. I think some people missed that. I'm not even sure. I'm thinking of hiding this. Thinking of hiding. People are gonna copy it if I don't.
If you're so light, you look white, but both of your parents are black. That has nothing to do with being a mulatto. I mean, it has nothing to do with it. You might feel that way, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about mulatto, somebody with a white parent, because the history of this is that it's been used to undermine African civilization throughout history. There are books that have been written on it, so it's important for you to understand. It's something we need to understand. Let's listen to Dr. John Henry Clarke as he explains the role of the mulatto in their undermining of the Haitian Revolution. And bear with me, I just want to make sure we still screen sharing. Okay, we good. Yes. So let's go ahead and go into this.
And I have studied it down through the ages. But I have always threatened to write a massive book about it and never wrote a line.
Okay, we're going to end here after this video.
I write out the title for the book.
Thank you.
And I talk out chapters in the book, but I never write the book. It is so delicate and dangerous and so painful that a person like me who opened many doors and talked about many things, even at the risk of being killed, hadn't even put it down. The book is called The Role of the Bastard as a Factor in History. How people have bastardized other people through their women and use the bastard to control them. Yes. And having used the bastard, refused to accept the bastard in the home of the father that created him and send him back to his mother's people to start confusion. Yes.
We're here. Have a good night.
When and if I dared, and somebody going to have to give me a bodyguard 24 hours a day if I ever did, I would have to
you need a bodyguard
write about
wrote
how
this book because it would make, I guess, people hate him for talking about mulattoes.
They literally destroyed the Haitian Revolution.
We did that.
How the mulatto generals, sons and daughters of the French black mothers and French fathers betrayed the Haitian Revolution and went over to the French against Toussaint Louverture. And a French general who hated both blacks and mulattoes called Rochambeau. He's going to teach the mulatto general, the mulattoes, a lesson.
This is like, I find an unveiled threat to don't go with white people. This is, they do that. You can't go with white people kind of thing, I feel.
that I hate you just as much as I hate the blackest of the blacks. So he gave a gala party for the wives of the mulatto generals. At the end of the party, he said, I have some presents for you, ladies, and some boxes. So go in the room and open the boxes. It was the heads of their husbands. He had cut their heads off to show you I have just as much contempt for you yellow niggas as I got for the blackest of the blacks. The Rochambeau incident in Haitian history was so embarrassing and so painful. Most Haitian historians have written it and left it out. Couldn't face it. Yes. Too embarrassing. And Christophe, one of the last of the powerful of the three generals, mentioned it in passing. One of the last of the mulatto governors, Pétain, when they were arguing about democracy or dictatorship, Christophe had a dictatorship, but everybody was fed and going to school and doing well. And Pétain had another part of the island that was called a democracy, modeled after Europe, but everybody was starving over that. And when he faced Christophe, he said that if the French, Christophe had been a staple boy, head waiter in the French Inn, also fought in the American Revolution, but that's another story. So when he faced Christophe, he said, if the French had killed you, I wouldn't have you to contend with. And Christophe's answer was classic. If your mother had the common decency to keep Frenchmen out of her bed, I wouldn't have you to contend with.
Night, guys. Night. 5,000.